All right, and we are live. This is Maggie McKenna from the St. Lawrence County Arts Council. Thank you so much for joining us for Art's Sake with Thomas Novosel today. He'll be showing you some of his ink drawings and maybe even doing some drawing exercises. He's working on some really incredible projects. So click the link in the description here to check out his full portfolio, and definitely like him on Facebook as well. I really appreciate all the artists who have come up and said, hey, I want to present my stuff. I want to be a part of this program. So thank you to Thomas and to everybody who's been and will be doing this program. We also are starting to work on setting up sponsors for each of these projects. Or each of these presentations, I mean. So if you're at all interested in becoming a sponsor and helping to support the local arts community here, please do reach out to me directly. My email address is director@slcartscouncil.org. And we'll talk about how to work out that sponsorship. So I don't want to take up too much of your time, so I'm just going to skip right over to Thomas and mute myself so y'all can so y'all can meet him and he can show you what he's working on. If anybody has any comments, I'll be following the live feed and I can ask comments. I can ask Thomas those questions for you. So enjoy.
All right. Hello, I'm Thomas Novosel. My camera is pointed at my desk because I have kind of a shaky setup, so you're not going to see my wonderful face, but you will see my wonderful drawings. So as Maggie has said, I have been working on a number of commissions lately, as I've recently opened up my commissions for the first time in a while. But here are some recent ones. They are about 5-inch by 7-inch large, done with I think it's a 0.25 technical pen from Rapidograph, which is really nice. And each one takes about like 5 to 6 hours. And as you can see, they're fairly detailed. This is an art style that I've been working on getting towards over the last couple of years, and I've just slowly gotten better and slowly gotten like better at the shading and cross hatching and everything like that. So yeah, so these are some of my recent works. I'm going to my plan is to go over like the process of what I did for these, just because I think that is interesting to see. But then also I will be going over some drawing exercises that I do regularly in order to get up to like this level of cross hatching and this level of thinking of stuff. There are things that I've been doing for a couple years now, and I find them incredibly valuable. So we're going to start with this bear, right? So for this bear, I was given the person who commissioned it, his name is, I think it's Calvin. He commissioned it looking at one of the front-on pictures of a different monster that I had drawn. And he said, I want it to be more nature-inspired, probably like tangled antlers, but I want it to look old and kind of tired. So it's like hunched over, it has like moss growing on it, but it has tons of arms. So the first thing I did was I looked up references for bears. And then I worked on a concept sketch. So the concept sketching phase is where I look at my reference and I come up with ideas. And usually it's not in the final pose of what I'm looking to do. I want to see it at a different pose because that'll inform a lot of my proportions for where I'm going for. And also, like, I want to see how it looks in an action pose before I put it in a static pose. So I started up here, kind of like pulling back the skin on a bear's head, drawing out some moss. You can see I'm doing this in pencil. It's because it's usually pretty quick, but it's also so that I can change stuff, so I can erase before playing around with pens. As you can see over here, this is my like side view. I wanted it to be roaring because that would allow me to like do something interesting with the mouth, where I could like have a second set of teeth going on in there, kind of like the xenomorphs in the movie Alien, which is a sci-fi horror movie that people may be familiar with. But And then I was like, oh, what if the mouth is closed? And I thought the mouth was closed was going to be like a little more boring if I went that direction. So this is the concept step. Once I have like some concept sketched out, I would then go to the person who commissioned it, show them what I've come up with, and see if this was the direction they were going for. These usually don't take a lot of time, like, or they, it depends on the project, obviously, but I try to get through this step as fast as possible so we can nail down an idea as quick as possible. He thought it was amazing, so we went along with that. And what I did next was taking my side view right here, I gridded out a smaller drawing of like how tall it would look in a hunched pose, right? That way, when I sketched it out on this, I would sketch out a grid just as big as this, but blown up, so that I could be like, okay, the nose is down here, top of the head's over here, shoulders, legs, all of that. After I have that all sketched out in pencil, so I would sketch it out in pencil here. And since I use the same paper for my pencil as I do the ink, I can't show you the sketch of the pencil, but trust me, there was pencil under it. And then I would do an outline of all of it and then go in for the details. And then I would have this. So usually the pencil sketch gets approved before I start the inking process, because I can't go backwards from the inking process without having to spend all the time over again. So, but that's my process for when I'm working on a piece like this. If it's a personal piece, I will often spend a lot more time on the concept phase, or I'll spend a lot more time on the pencil sketch phase for myself. So, now, when it comes to exercises, I'm going to show you some of my sketchbook quick. Because I think this is important. It's important to have a sketchbook, and it's important to play in your sketchbook. So, for instance, we have like creatures running through the woods over here, chatting with each other. I was playing with something different there. I have just like random sketches of things and me and faces. So this is something I've been doing recently. I've been copying the images out of books as best as I can, usually in pencil first, sometimes, or usually with pen first, but sometimes pencil first. Trying to get like as close as I can by looking at it next to each other without like tracing or anything like that. And I'd say some of these are more successful than others. Like this one is closer to what I was looking at in a horror comic. More examples of sketchbook pages. We have a bunch here. We have like Harley Quinn from Batman. We have a troll from an art book by Paul Bonner. We have a Batman. We have like another troll character down here from a Paul Bonner book. We have some more scary stuff. And this was all done with ballpoint pen, because I usually don't use my normal pens when I'm sketching because it requires more care. But you can see that I'm spending a lot of time like playing with crosshatches and angles and just like trying to make it as interesting as I can with like what I have for shadow abilities. But I'm also keeping in mind like where stuff overlaps. So I left some space here so you could still see the little, what is it, like proboscis or whatever it's called. This was because I like Jaws. Eyes are always fun. That's a creature from a different book. This is the head of a soldier from a video game that I've like modified with some stuff going around it. And then we just have like general faces. This was copied out of a very different comic book style than what I'm used to. So like much more bigger figures, like a little bulkier than what I do, and a lot more faces because I often don't draw human faces. It's something about the symmetry kind of throws me off when I'm drawing.
That's really interesting.
Thank you.
So cool though.
But yeah, so a lot of it is, a lot of my practice ends up being copying out of stuff or doodling. Just because then you can kind of like mimic artists' forms and curves as best as you can with whatever tool you use. And it can help you like learn a great deal. And it requires a lot of time and effort, but I tend to get pretty decent results. So I'll just let you look at that for a second. before we go on to more of like a drawing thing. So, okay. So, an exercise that I do is I like to draw curves. So for curves, for me, there are like a couple pretty basic ones that I use all the time that I find teach me everything I need to know when I'm doing like my ballpoint pen stuff. And a lot of them look like this. The best way I can describe this is it's a weird mix of like an eyeball, because you can see like the general form there, and then like little shapes of what holds an eye in place. And what I do with that then is after I draw like the baselines, I'll then start drawing in little contour lines that I don't completely finish. So let me grab a piece of paper and I'll show you what I mean. So I do this with pretty much everything, but I'll start with a square because that's an easy example. So I'll start with a square, or I'll start with any space. I don't need a box around it to be able to do this. But I'll start by like drawing some pretty flowy shapes. And then sometimes connect them, right? So that's step one. Step two is I start to try to like do a couple more. I want to make this as interesting as possible with just like it feels like movements going on. The best way to describe it is kind of like watching someone drop like partially made jello, I guess, or like ooze. And then once I have this, I will then go in and add some of these, which are my little, I guess like the skin that wraps around the eye or like holds it in place or moves it and whatnot. So I'll add some of those. And kind of like make them a little uneven so that they're a little interesting to watch, but also to look into. It kind of adds a little bit of depth, but also like a little bit of alienness in it. And then once I have this, I try to figure out how I can make it curved using contour lines. So I'll start with like some basic ones at first. Usually starting with the edges so I can kind of define something. So I'm going to have this actually go back because that seems interesting. But to make that happen, I have to go all the way. That's fine. Do this one. Now I'm doing with this with Sharpie just so that it's as clear as possible because I often work incredibly small using very, very small pens. But then I can add some more. Where it looks like I want some more. So like on the opposite edge, I'll add some. Usually I don't connect them fully because that can muddy the image quite a bit. I'd rather draw individual lines than have like one big long curved line going across it. Like that. And this can be like the basis of a lot of things. Like this could be the beginning of a like Medusa head. Like the top of it. I can use like those forms to make one. It could also be like the bottom of an octopus. But I use that to create a lot of like weirdness in my drawings because it is a weird shape that you don't see as often, I feel like, or you don't think you see as often. And it teaches like a lot about hatching around curves while trying to preserve like the three-dimensionalness of it. So for instance, if I draw something like this, I could either turn it into a tentacle or I could turn it into a very strange bone. And I can use it for that. Add cross hatching underneath. Yeah, so you kind of get the point. But I would do squares like this, but I would do them for entire pages. Or I would just do like, I'd start drawing a face and then I would just start adding cross hatching into it in like weird ways to play with it. And it's a little bit of a brunt force thing, right? So these are just like the contour lines. If I were to add cross hatching, then I'm adding a little more like shadow to it. So I'd like go in a different direction, usually a 45-degree difference. So if I have a straight line here, I want to create a couple of them, and then I'll start in this direction. And then I'll go down, and then the other way. Yeah. And sometimes I'll like double on a different way. And that's how I like get my various shadows and stuff.
Thomas, I hope you know that this is absolute magic.
I
I'm watching you do this and I'm like, I can't visualize what this is going to be or what it's going to look like. And this is just so cool. So keep on going, but like
okay.
I had to tell you that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so and that comes to a point that I only very recently recognized that what I do is difficult, and that it is the outcome of years of doing it, right? So, a little backstory. I started drawing in 2015, I'm pretty sure. And from spring 2015 to December 2015, I think I drew something like 200 pages of sketches. And then the next year, which was 2016, like all of 2016, I think I went down to like 100. 2017, though, I think I was up to 600 sketch pages. And I would often take breaks between days, but I would fill like 3 or 4 pages in a day when I did draw to make up for it. So this is as blunt force as I think as you could learn something. There are times where I wish I had spent more time like doing actual studies, because I didn't use reference all those times. Imagine if I had used reference material. I would probably be further ahead earlier than I was. Or I could not have been. It could be that the only reason I was drawing was because I wasn't using reference material. But either way, it takes a very different amount of time to get wherever you're going. And I think cross-hatching by itself can be integrated into pretty much everything. And not always in the way that I'm doing it. You can do it with like colored pencils to get different colors. You could do it with markers. You could do it with just regular pencil. That way you're not like grinding into the paper and getting like that super reflective feeling that you can get from some graphite. But yeah, so, and it doesn't have to be as dramatic as what I'm doing here either. So like if I draw this and then I'm going to draw an eye, right? So if I draw an eye here and then I'm going to go big old eye thing, right? So the parts that I'm using up here, like this gooey part, that's the inside right here. And all of these things that I'm doing when I'm cross-hatching are C's more often than they're straight lines. Because if I'm doing straight lines, I'm doing it because I want an angle. If I'm doing C's, it's because I want it to be a curve. Right? So looking at this eye, where would I cross-hatch it? Well, I kind of want down here to like look like it's pressing in. So I would do probably C's like this, which create kind of a little valley, like pushing down. Right? And then over here, I'm going to do probably like big ones to start with. and then come down into littler ones, because that looks interesting. And then because I did that, it looks like this line right here, it looks like the eyeball is resting on top of it. What I want is it to look like it's under it. So I'm going to add a little bump so that it looks kind of like it's under it a little better. And then to give that, well, I guess this right here now looks a little flat, right? So we're going to add another curve right here. I'm not touching that bottom line. And now, this deep part right here, because I added the same direction up here, now this part doesn't look as deep. So I'm going to add a little more, like come in on an angle. So what I'm doing right there is this. So I have my lines right here, and then I'm coming in like this, filling in these areas, which makes it look a little deeper, I think. I'll do the same over here. A hard part when you're doing patterns is you don't want to use the same pattern for everything. You definitely want variation. Because if you don't have the variation going on, it can get really muddy really quick. And once it becomes really muddy really quick, you either have to dig in and hope you can save it, or you may have to start over because you can't pull ink off the page as far as I know. I know digital people who use digital can do that. Sadly, I cannot with my markers, but so add some up here, but not too much because I want it to be like, deeper in there. And then maybe some like curves on the eye for shadow. And then,
John just said, you make it look so easy.
I'm sorry, John. Yeah, I get that. But it's practice.
Yeah, we want to encourage people to practice. That's what this is all about, right? Oh, Thomas, you just muted yourself, love. I think I can unmute you though. Unmute. No.
Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good now.
Okay, sorry. Someone tried calling.
Oh, that's okay.
So the key lesson here is it's a very careful placement of hatch marks and curves, which you will get a gut instinct for over time. So you'll start, and it may look really messy to start with, but that's because you're developing an eye for it, I think. Developing an eye for like how the hatch marks will look later on in a drawing, which takes time because you have to like get used to what hatch marks visually are. So I kind of had an idea where I'm going with this, but not really. Like I just have like a couple things that I have done like 100 times now. So I know that it works out well as long as I leave white space here. Because if I add like that, I mean, that looks kind of interesting, but it also looks a little confusing because you lose like some of that bump. So I'd have to like complete the line up there. And then you can see if you like started doing that everywhere, it can start to get like harder. So you end up having to like replace the shadows with a thicker line. And I've lost like some of my cleanness that I had going on. Like it gets muddy quick. So, but that's how I do hatch marks. I obviously don't use a Sharpie. Usually I actually usually use this pen, which has a very, very fine point and draws lines that are about yay thick. And for comparison, obviously my Sharpie lines are that thick. So
the difference in the video for sure.
yeah. So that's why I was using the Sharpie for this part. So this is a practice I did earlier, but we're gonna do that, and I do need to do a sketch. So I think I am going to copy briefly this amazing picture, which is from a Walt Disney design book, and it's a painting that was a concept art for The Little Mermaid. And I'd never done any out of these books before, but I'll try to keep like them pretty close. And I'm just going to focus on this little area right there. So we're going to move the light a little closer. So is that pretty clear to see? I think.
Sorry. Yes, that looks good to me.
Okay. All right, cool.
I'll let you know if I can't see it.
Okay, sounds good. And I'm going to use a Pilot Precise V7, which is probably my preferred ballpoint because it mimics a technical pen, and that it's really dark and it doesn't have like a lot of variation. Whereas pens like this, like your like big pens, act a little more like permanent pencils, in that you can get like a lot of color variation with them. So, but what I'm going to do is take this little painted area and I'm going to translate it over here onto paper as best as I can, while also trying to like talk through my process. So it looks like this line right here is going to be the first line that I want, because it's a pretty straight vertical line and it meets down here with the C. So I'll be able to like frame my image based off of that a bit. And then, let's grab a ruler, because that's sometimes useful to demonstrate. So from where the bridge is on top down to where the water is, it's a little over an inch. And I'll just hold it there. So that would be, I don't know, like if I guess it's like 1/8 apart. So if this is our inch, and we divided it into 8 sections, and means our top is up here. So let me see if I can turn on a light that's better. All right, and I'm just going to quietly draw for a second. But you know, the goal for me here isn't total accuracy. It's to get as like best as I can, especially since it's like a little bit of an architecture vibe going on. So kind of similar to how I did the exercise. I start with the big lines first, and then I'll go in with like little details like the corners, and then I'll go in with cross hatching. So I think the edge of that's a little uneven. I often do my sketches in pen first, because I found that it kind of like gets me used to looking with the pen, rather than trying to like I'm trying to get like as close as I can on the first shot rather than having to erase and do more. Obviously, paid work is generally very different because you will do whatever it takes to get the shot right. But for something like this, I'm just trying to get better, which means do it in as few attempts as possible. But there's like, okay, it's like little trees and stuff. And this is like a sideways ladder for a railing. Some water. This is our little green land. Some bumps. Palm trees. So over here, it looks like this little bump out is kind of about at the same height as that. So I want it to be kind of over here because I use that as like a little bit of a measurement. We have here our little more railing. Goes in a little bit. I'd say that's like 1/3 of this height. So we want to be like probably there. Like that. That tall probably. You can see the underside of this ring up here, right there. So we want to make sure that's visible as well. And there's some thickness. So add that as best we can. I can't really see the curve right now, so we're just going to draw in like those brief little window lines. And this one's thicker. These go out quite a bit. And there's, I'd say this one on the edge is like a big one too. So there's probably 4 big ones. And there's the one right here. So now we can have the smaller ones as we can fit them. And then we have kind of like a squished dome. So we're going to draw the curve first on top as best as we can over the center. And then come down. Because we're trying to mirror how we would think this would probably be like constructed by the artist who did it. Because that's ultimately what we're trying to learn from. And then that up there kind of looks like this. It looks like a T if these sides were squished a little more, like up here. So we're going to try to get that rather than draw an actual box up there. Just like that. Then up here you can see the side a little more, so we're going to make it 3-dimensional probably. I drew those probably a little too tall, but that's fine. And then we have another little cap there. Now, as you can see, my drawing has gotten much bigger than how I thought it was going to start out, but that's because I picked a reference that wasn't the full size to start with, but that's fine. And then the flag will just be kind of wiggly. And there's like some shadow. Cool. And then I think we're going to count the trees as like details in this instance. So, all right. So this is my broad line. So this would be the big curves, right? So now we want to get the little curves that aren't hatched in, that are just like little details. So for this, for little details, I see the tree. Some of these reflections down here would be nice if we could get it somehow. Some of these brick lines that are visible. Not the shadows, but the brick lines. And then there's a little more detail on the handrail that'd be nice to get. And then obviously the windows, this upper part here, the dome, essentially all of the lines that aren't shadow based as best we can. But we want to make sure we don't go too far in, otherwise we will run out of space for the shadows. So we're going to kind of just mimic the shape of the bricks, not get them exactly. So it looks like kind of like this type of pattern. So it's a little uneven, but they still have like that a little bit. So for down here, we're going to draw every other one because otherwise we'll get too close to cross hatching for what we're going for. So we'll start on this side, which is we're going to shade out that line as best we can to make it a little easier to look at. There. Okay. So down here we have one that I can draw. We definitely want to have the ones that are on this like shadow so that we can tell where we're at. And then we have on the second one, we're going to want one like a bunch. Okay, and then over here, this one has like a big rock here. So we're going to fill them in kind of unevenly just to see what it looks like. Because we're trying to get some sort of balance on this with the details. How's that look? That looks pretty good. These ones are going to be a little thinner, I think. So I'm going to go for some like uneven sides. Some under here because we're kind of seeing the side here. This is our corner. All right, and then we have the underside of the handrail, which is like a little line. So you can see like the underside of this lip. And then it looks like the biggest rocks are up here, which kind of makes sense. So we have kind of like this. Okay, so it's a good thing I drew this line here because that's very distinctly there. But I kind of want to break from drawing the bricks. So we're going to draw windows. Something I like to do is to literally just mix it up all the time, like the order I'm doing stuff. That way, maybe my bricks will not come out like as less even. So I want to like alternate what I'm working on.
That's interesting. Is that a concept that you came up with on your own that you just found worked for you, or did somebody suggest that?
So usually, and this comes from some of like the classes that I've taken, is that if you bring everything forward, you'll have the same quality across the entire piece. So I won't do all of my steps over here and then do all my steps across. I'll do all of step 1 here, then all of step 2 across the entire thing, then all of step 3. That way there isn't like a stark quality difference as you figure out better ways to do things across it. Part of that's like planning for me. Moving around, if I see that I start to get like a little lazy with my bricks, I'm going to move to something else so that when I go back to the bricks, I have like what I liked, which was this pattern down here, not so much the pattern up here. Because I want it to look a little more purposeful than me stitching together like dragon scales, which is kind of what you get here, where it looks like they're coming out from underneath each other rather than here where they're like bumping into each other. So
Right. It's
yeah.
kind of like a musician shouldn't just work on the beginning of a piece. They should work on the whole thing and work on it in sections. It's very similar.
Exactly. You want everything to come together, literally to come together. If you only work in one spot, you're going to have like one really cool spot, and then you could become exhausted with the basics and be already moving on to thinking about the little more finer things without having finished the basic stuff, like the outline. So we want line here, line here, line here, line here, line here. I think I am going to add like the little window panes because they're kind of important. I'm not really going to count them though. I'm just going to draw them in and do what looks kind of right. That's pretty good. All right. Now for the roof, we have kind of like a smaller curve that's mimicking. So we're going to draw. Because we want to follow like the shape of our form that we got going on here. Form being kind of like spheres. We want to follow the shape of the sphere. If it's a box, we want to follow the shape of the box, right? So that it emphasizes these what you would call faces or sides. You don't want them to conflict with it. So drawing like this first and not having it be part of shadowing kind of like looks weird to me because it breaks this line right here. But okay, so up here on the roof, we have kind of like a box with a circle in it. And then we don't have a circle in the box up here, but we have like another box on top. So we'll call this top done. Yeah, the top's done. And then over here, it looks like they have this. So like just straight lines going down. Kind of, again, trying to show off that this is a curve like this, like a ring, but that also bends out. Right, and then we have a little spiral down here. Boop. And then I think we're ready to draw more bricks. So it's kind of like a little lighter on this side because because you can't see as much of the shadow because the sun's hitting it. So I'm gonna try something different and be like a little looser with it here and then tighten it over here. And I'm looking more to have my bricks match up with the size of my bricks than to match up with what they have in here. Because I also have to recognize that I am using a different medium. So like some of the color variations they're getting are things that I can't get with pens. Not with how I'm doing it today, at least. And kind of like curves a bit. We're going to draw some tight bricks. All right, so I don't really care about this tree as much. And down here, I guess I'll add like a little more emphasis. We have our hills and the water back there. There's like a little one here. And then I'm actually not going to worry about the reflection. I'll just draw like some waves so we know it's water. All right, so this is the end of step 2 of the example. So I have, you can kind of tell where like the curves of everything is thanks to this step. Whereas the other step you just had kind of like silhouettes going on or like basic lines. So I can see that here is that way. Right here is more of like a janky cylinder. So now we're going to look more directly at the shadows that are going on over here. Or we're going to try to crosshatch them in. We're going to start with like single line, right? So to figure out where that works. And then we'll go in with the next one as a second pass, third one as another pass, and then if need be, fourth one as another pass. So it looks like we're going to get the darkest areas first, which are up to here. Like right here, there's a bunch of darkness and shadows. So we're going to do that as what would work best here. So I'm afraid that I'll lose like these parallel like lines if I go this way. But also it'll cause this to blend in if I do the parallel. So I think I may just go at like that type of 45 to start with. And then over here, I'll do the parallel to get my curves. Because that works best over here, I think, because I want to make sure that cylinder part is. But since this is flat, it should work okay. And a lot of this is just eyeballing it, obviously. Like I'm trying to work through it a little bit to figure out where it'll go, but ultimately it's a little bit of guesswork and then figuring out your own process for it. But first you have to like kind of hear how someone else works through it. That way you can be like, well, that doesn't work for me. and then just change it completely, or be like, I'll try some other way. So we have some of our shadow there. Looks pretty good. And we have our wall over here, which I'm actually going to draw this balcony because I think it's pretty cool. I'm going to draw it quickly though. So then some crosshatch for it. So you can kind of see the shadow of the wall going on. That way you see it's a building. Scribble. Nice. And then what else do we got? We have under here, like under this lip, we need some shading or shadow going on. So we're gonna go down the length of it to get that. And then over here underneath this, we have a little bit of that, but we want to make sure we keep it curved. So we try to make the cross hatching the same length across it. That way it does create a little bit of a curve. Up top, up here, there's some that we may want to catch in the same direction, just for consistency's sake. A little more up here. And then, yeah. Actually, we're going to catch the flag too, because this direction works well for that. Yeah. Maybe a little bit here, a little under there. Cool. So now that we have that, we can, oops, I forgot a line there, because there's like some thickness up there. All right, now I can go in a different direction, I think. So for here, I want it to be like straight mostly. So I'm going to come in and do very small straight lines to get that shadow in. Because I think that like its length is what I'm trying to make look important. And then up here into that curve. We'll do it again over here. Over here the same. That looks pretty cool. Oh, some here too, I guess. Now, looks like there's a bit of shadow, so I'm just gonna thicken this line because that's easier there. Okay, I think I'm ready to start doing curves here. So I'm gonna use kind of like C's, so like this. I'm going all the way to the top, but this comes down, kind of like thins out. But on this side, we kind of want full length. So I'm going to start in the middle and then work my way over. As you can see, I'm not doing like the entire way. I like to do like short lines so that I can adjust the curve easier. Like little C's rather than do a big one like this, because it'll be a little harder to keep that perfectly parallel when I'm just like doing it without a pencil. And I'm just doing it like by hand like this. So go all the way up. I should also note that I am doing these crosshatches very quickly compared to some other people that I see do it. And it's because I'm not going for like super pristine lines here. I'm just going to try to get like a sketchy feel. So if I wanted it to be like super crisp and careful, then I would go much slower and I would just be like slowly doing each one to make sure I get it as like perfectly as possible, and so that I don't go outside my outline that I created. So, all right. And then we also have one up here, I guess. I should go in this direction probably. I'm stopping it midway through to make it look like there's kind of a shadow going on. And then the windows, I'm not going to crosshatch in the actual window panes because I think that'll confuse it too much. But I may do one there on the outside because it looks a little more interesting that way. The underneath here, I want it to be flat. So I'm going to do flat lines. Like just little straight ones. But since it's darker, I'm going to go in a different direction as well. And then it's a little bit of a shadow here, so I should probably thicken that line up. And then a shadow is cast by this tower down. So we're going to go down here and put a shadow here, I guess, in that direction. And underneath over here definitely has some. Curve up here. We want some. Put an angle there, which will go in for a second time. All right, so that looks pretty good there. I want to make these thicker though, because right now they kind of just look like stripes. But if I had like a little shadow side on each one, it'll look a little more like rails, like railing posts or whatever. So now we want some darkness further over here because we want like 2 shades probably. So we're gonna go 45. A little bit bigger line this time instead of like that little curve one that I had done. All right, and now we're starting to lose some of these rocks in here, I think. So before I go another way, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the lines on the other side of some of them a little darker, just so that I can kind of still get that rock feel if I were to add another hatching layer. We're going to add a little bit to the other ones over here so you can kind of see it transitioning. All right, and now that we have that, we're going to come up as close to this edge as possible right here and go in the opposite 45 for a little bit. And then finally, we're going to thicken this line by just filling it in on the closest part of it. But we get kind of a pretty nice curve. I think this transition here needs to be softer, so I'm not going to connect it. But I'm going to draw another thin, like tall hatch line, stripe, or whatever. Trying to keep that curve there. That looks pretty good. Over here, we kind of want a little darkness on top one for variation purposes. What else we got? This post right here again. That one, that one. Come down this at a different angle. Up here, we want one. We're going to match this curve so it can kind of get a little better. So then we're going to want to darken up tile portion so it's still there. And this outside, we're going to just like 90 degrees on it. When I say 90 degrees, I guess perpendicular is the better word, but a little more detail, a little more detail, a little more detail, a little more detail. And it's dark on this side, so we're gonna not crosshatch all the way like I did down here because we don't want to match the same intensity. And we're also gonna do something like this, maybe see what that looks like. Looks pretty cool. And up here we have little bumps on it, which I'm gonna draw kind of like this. Or I guess I did draw it like that. So, and then finally our trees, which I'm not amazing at trees, so I kind of half do them. But that's because I mostly don't draw pictures of trees, despite all the wonderful reference material we have up here in like St. Lawrence County, Adirondack area, and all of that stuff. We have like amazing reference material that I just don't use. So yeah, but there. So that is my kind of like sketch copy of this as a workout. So yeah, that's what I got.
This is so cool.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing this. I may even be able to take the video and like speed up your drawing, maybe. I don't know. I'm gonna test it out.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Have fun with it. So
yeah, I'm testing out like free video software, so why not?
Mm-hmm. Of course. Of course.
Does anybody have any anybody who's still live with us? Does anybody have any questions? You have to give it 10 seconds because of the delay, but that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, this has been super fun though. For anybody who's still watching, and we do still have a number of people still on with us, this has been Art for Art's Sake. This is a new virtual program from St. Lawrence County Arts Council, and we are showcasing artists of various medium, and we have music, we have maybe we'll have some dance, we'll have some photography, poetry, and other literary media. So if any artists are interested in participating in this program, just give me a holler. My email address is director@slcartscouncil.org. So just reach out to me and we'll get you on the schedule. We're going to do this for as long as we possibly can. We also have a donate button on this Facebook post, and we also have a website donation page, slcartscouncil.org/give. So if you'd like to see this programming and other local arts programming continue, please do jump on and make a donation today. Thomas, thank you so much for showing us your incredible art. We really appreciate your time and your amazing talent.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and we'll end the live video at this point, and people can continue to watch it after the fact, which is super cool. I'm so glad the live stream worked. So, okay. Woohoo.